Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're looking at the darkest Assassin's Creed moments.
Are hereby sentenced to death.
In a world where nothing is true and everything is permitted, there are going to be some moments of levity, but, as we will explore, moments of darkness too. Spoilers ahead.
Before we begin, we publish new content all week long, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
Phoebe's death. Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Phoebe! No.
Our first entry on this list is also the earliest, and for it we go back to 429 BCE with the death of a young protege. For Phoebe, the Misthios Cassandra was a true hero. She wanted to be around her all of the time and follow in Cassandra's footsteps to become a Misthios herself. Her interactions are highlights in the game for their humor and upbeat nature. But the brighter character, which is ironically the meaning of Phoebe's name, makes for a darker moment later. Her murder is a fixed point in a usually RPG-style narrative, meaning it can't be avoided, and reminds Cassandra of revenge. Phoebe appears once more in the underworld, and the sadness begins again.
Aniazu.
Basim returns. Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
It's a nice place to die, Eivor. Not everyone gets to choose.
Basim ibn Ishaq is an old-school hidden one, whose design invokes more than a few memories of Altair. With his uniquely dark voice and his mysterious aura, Basim is a character that players enjoy getting to know throughout Valhalla. But, as it turns out, he is a sage, a reincarnation of Loki, and had been taken over by the Isu consciousness. His betrayal of Eivor and Sigurd should have been his end, but Loki/Basim survived and summoned the modern assassins to his tomb. His return through the restorative powers of the Staff of Hermes came at Leia's expense, and now an Isu consciousness exists in the present day. The last we see of him, he is on his way to William Miles himself.
I will put them to good use to find my children and bring my family back together.
Mary Reed succumbs to illness. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag.
Still looking sleek and mean. Did you steal that costume from a dandy in Havana?
Initially posing as James Kidd, the illegitimate son of William, it becomes apparent very quickly that there is something about Mary Reed. Her cross-dressing is purely to guarantee a place in the fight against the Templars, and one which ultimately costs her her life. Having given birth in prison, an incarcerated Mary falls seriously ill. When Edward Kenway arrives to rescue her, it is just too late. As Mary goes from leaning to being carried, the sense of hopelessness grows until she finally asks Edward to put her down. Despite pleas, Mary gives up the ghost and dies mere steps away from freedom, but assuring her friend that she'll be with him.
What's happened to Mary? What's wrong?
Is she gone?
Al-Mu'alim betrays Massif. Assassin's Creed.
That nothing is true, and everything is permitted.
The first big bad of Assassin's Creed was also the first big betrayal. Much of the original Assassin's Creed is spent seeking advice and talking philosophy with 12th century Levantine Brotherhood of Assassins leader Rashid ad-Din Sana, otherwise known as Al-Mu'alim, the Mentor. His assimilation of the mind-controlling Apple of Eden turns Al-Mu'alim against his ideals, and he brainwashes his assassins into doing his bidding. He then attempts to lay waste to the hometown of Massif, but is unable to overcome protagonist Altair, who is forced to kill his father figure and stop him from controlling the world with his treasured Isu tech.
Go and claim your prize.
You held fire in your hand, old man. It should have been destroyed.
Destroy the only thing capable of ending the Crusades and creating true peace?
Elise dies. Assassin's Creed Unity.
He's getting away!
Wait, I'm almost free.
I can take him!
No, you can't. Not alone.
A rare instance of a bridge built between the assassins and their Templar enemies came through the young love of Arnaud Dorian and Elise Delaserre. However, the differences are apparent in their approach to pacify antagonist Germain, who fell into possession of the Sword of Eden. With Arnaud stuck under rubble, Elise goes after their enemy alone, but receives the full force of its Isu power, killing her. Despite being feet away, Arnaud is unable to save her, and she dies without getting to say goodbye. Without her love, Arnaud devotes himself fully to the Assassin's Creed and heads up the Paris Brotherhood alone. Desmond's Sacrifice, Assassin's Creed 3. Though it was building for 5 games, Desmond Miles' most heroic act would be his last. As the world was threatened with a solar flare, of which similar occurrences had destroyed the pre-human civilization Isu population, Desmond stepped up. The series protagonist had come a long way from bartending at the Bad Weather nightclub, through to living his ancestors' memories and wielding the Apple of Eden. But to save the world with tech that the Isu left behind, he would have to sacrifice himself and release the malevolent Juno too. It was a small price to pay in Desmond's eyes, and although part of him lives on within the gray as the reader, Desmond's death was shocking. The Auditores are executed. Assassin's Creed 2.
You and your collaborators are hereby sentenced to death.
The moment that took the Assassin's Creed games down an unexpected path is arguably that of the Auditore family being framed and subsequently executed in front of new protagonist Ezio's eyes. As an assassin, the family patriarch Giovanni is set up by his Templar enemies for uncovering the Pazzi conspiracy, but all the male members are to pay the price. With Ezio elsewhere, they are arrested and taken away. The family are all fun characters within the narrative, providing a much-needed levity from the seriousness of the first game. The deaths of the warm Giovanni and amusing brothers Federico and Petruccio start Ezio on his quest for vengeance, and players feel the shock of the execution.
Hey! Grab the boy! He's one of them! I'll kill you for what you've done! Guards! Arrest him!
Lucy's death and betrayal, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and Assassin's Creed 3.
Cease your struggle.
From the moment we meet her, Lucy Stillman is a light-hearted relief for Desmond Miles, and doesn't seem to be the typical Abstergo antagonist. It's quite a relief when she busts Desmond out of the facility at the beginning of the second game, establishing her as one of the good guys. Except, sadly, she isn't, and is in fact a triple agent. Though he later admitted some knowledge in his actions, the Isu entity of Juno showed Desmond that Lucy Stillman was a traitor and controlled him into using his hidden blade to assassinate her, before shutting him down before he can explain himself.
Go alone.
The Lisbon Earthquake, Assassin's Creed Rogue. There has always been an element of Indiana Jones-esque tomb raiding in the Assassin's Creed series, from Altair finding the Apple of Eden to Ezio discovering his resting place. While it seemed the controlling Shay Cormac to find an artifact in Portugal was more of the same, it had very surprising consequences. In retrieving Isu technology, Cormac triggers an earthquake that, in actual historical records, left 30,000 people dead. Whilst he escaped with the artifact, the tragedy turned Shay against the assassins, and he would seek revenge against his order.
How could God do this to them?
God had nothing to do with this.
Camus' Fate, Assassin's Creed Origins.
I'm going to find every stone circle, the Sphinx and the pyramids too, and I'll find my place.
From his entrance in the game, Bayek of Siwa is not presented as a typical assassin, bound to his creed and unafraid to take a life. Instead, players find that they are controlling a family man who has a more positive air about him. His interactions with his son Kimu are a testament to his unique brightness. All that changes very quickly though. Despite being unintentional, stabbing his own son forced Bayek onto a path of vengeance and sadness that only he could navigate. And while the story details the start of the assassins, players are constantly reminded of the Medjai's pain, and it is apparent that the Assassin's Creed was born out of pain and darkness.
Check out these other great clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.